Kapowski Reads, and this is my Reading Scottish wrap up for April. I apologise if the noise is a bit rubbish. It's a really nice day today, so the world and its wife are out mowing their lawns and it's kinda loud. I have been making a conscious effort to read more books by Scottish authors. So every month I try to read at least some books by Scottish authors. The last few months it's been 4 books a month, and this month it's exactly the same. I got through 4. So I'm just gonna go through the books that I read, and yeah. If you read any of these books, then let me know in the comments how you got on with them, and if you've read any books by Scottish authors that you've really enjoyed, please let me know, because I love getting new recommendations of Scottish fiction. So the first book was Hyde by Craig Russell, and I picked this book up because it won the MacLeod award last year, and that is the award that goes to the Scottish crime novel of the year, and I had read the 2020 winner, which was Pine by Francine Toon, and I loved it. So I thought, well, I want to read the next winner. This book was about a police captain called Hyde in Edinburgh, and he experienced periods of memory loss and was being treated by a physician for that. And there were murders happening in Edinburgh that seemed to be linked to a cult. So Captain Hyde was looking into that, all the while trying to hide his medical condition and find out what was going on with his memory in those huge periods of time that he was missing. I absolutely loved the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when I was gonna say when I was a kid. I still love it now. This book was so gothic and creepy and chilling, and I was originally a little bit scared that it was gonna be too scary, maybe a bit too grisly, which is sometimes why I don't get on so well with crime novels, but it wasn't overtly graphic. There were a lot of nods to Robert Louis Stevenson and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I loved, and I loved the characters in this. So Captain Hyde, he was sort of your typical Victorian gruff policeman with a tortured past, but with his medical condition he kind of had a little bit more of a rounded character than just being, oh, I'm a grumpy man. So I quite like that. There was a doctor in this book who was called Dr. Callie. The name was spelled differently to how I spell my name, but that's still enough for me to enjoy seeing my name in a book. It rarely happens. And I really liked her. She was intelligent, she was brave, and she was really fearless, which I enjoyed, and I liked having that sort of character, that sort of female character in a Victorian setting, because it's not the standard Victorian female character that we usually get, and I really enjoyed that. I loved the cult element of this book. It was so creepy, and I really enjoyed it, and I was kept guessing throughout. There were so many twists and turns, and I kept guessing who the big bad was, and I was wrong every time, and I think I guessed every single character bar one, and it was that one. So I had no clue. I was kept guessing throughout. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I gave this book 4 stars, and I'm really happy I read it. It's also one of the books that I wanted to read this year, so from my 22 in 2022. So I'm extra happy to be making progress in that area, but also to be loving a book that I had been aiming to read. Now I feel bad for not reading it at the time. The next book I read was something a little out of the ordinary for me. It was definitely out of my comfort zone, and it was Deep Wheel Orcadia by Josephine Giles. And I was initially drawn to this book because of the absolutely stunning cover. And then I saw that it was a Scottish author and it was signed. This book had to come home with me. And it did, and I really enjoyed it. The reason that this book was out of my comfort zone is because it's a poetry novel. I haven't really read a lot of poetry after doing higher English in 2003, 4, something like that. So it's a really long time since I've read poetry. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but I really enjoyed this book, and it was so short. So it's a really short book, but it's also a dual language because this entire book is written in Orcadian. I read the Orcadian passages and then tried to work out what they said and then read the English translation. So I really enjoyed being able to learn Orcadian. I mean, I wouldn't be able to speak it, but it was really, really nice being able to see some of the words that I hadn't come across before. So this is a science fiction novel, which is all about a woman who returns back to her home, which is sort of like on a space station. She's been away on Mars at art school, and she arrives with a mysterious stranger who seemed to have a secret past, which was very, very interesting. And I just loved the idea of a space station being a home and going off to college on a different planet. That just seemed, yeah, I really enjoyed that as a concept, and I really liked this book. It was very short, but I still felt like I got to know and like the characters. I would have liked to know a little bit more about Darling, who was the mysterious stranger, but I'm okay with there being an element of mystery being left, so that's fine. I also really enjoyed the reading about the struggles of living on the space station, because when you sort of think about science fiction, it's quite nice to have it not be the perfect life in space. I don't know if that makes sense. I thought that this book was absolutely beautiful to read. It was really enjoyable. Obviously, as poetry, it is gonna be beautifully written, but I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm gonna be looking for more poetry to read because clearly that's something that I enjoy. Mrs. Brown would be proud. That was my English teacher. Next up was A History Maker by Alasdair Gray. This is a book set in a utopian society, which is more of a matriarchy and is set in the Scottish borders, where I am from. This entire book was set about 20 miles away from my hometown, so it was really enjoyable because I haven't read a lot of books that are set in the Scottish borders, and I suppose I tend to read books that are set in Edinburgh because that's relatively close to where I'm from, and that kind of makes me feel, you know, quite comforted. So it was really, really special being able to read a book that was set actually in my home county. The setting was just beautiful because the Scottish borders are stunning. It just made me feel all, you know, warm and fuzzy and just nostalgic for the gorgeous field, the rolling hills. For me, that gave an extra level of enjoyment. This was basically a memoir of a warrior. I preferred the first half of this book because it was all about the war that Wat, the main character, had fought in. And war in this world was basically televised as a form of entertainment. And there were these sort of sphere things. There were like cameras going around recording stuff and trying to get interviews, which was very bizarre. But I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the sort of politics behind the war and sort of the fallout from the battle. But I didn't enjoy the second half quite as much. It featured a few moments that just made me feel a little bit uncomfortable. There was a part in this book that was very clearly, you know, assault, and I wasn't okay with that. No. So that wasn't for me. But I did enjoy the world building in this, and I enjoyed a lot of the characters. I suppose that I found it a little disappointing in parts where the female characters spoke, because in this world the women were supposed to be in charge, but it felt like a lot of the organisation was done by the warrior. It just sort of felt like I did not really get any indication that this world was ran by women. If the back of the book didn't say that, and if it didn't refer to women being in charge at the beginning of the book, I would not have known that was the case, because it wasn't clear whoops in this book that women were in charge. The female characters in this book were very one-dimensional, I felt, with a few exceptions. I really liked the last chapter though. I loved the idea of the sky circus, but I would have quite liked to have seen the sky circus. But I did like this book. It was fun, it was a bit odd, and I like that in a book. The next time I pick up an Alasdair Gray book, it will probably be Lanark, unless I find another one first. I gave this book 3 stars. It would have been a 4, but I took off a star for the assault. And the last of my Scottish reads for April was Young Mungo by Douglas Stuart. And this was one of the books that I was most excited about being released in 2022. I pre-ordered it right at the beginning of January, and I've been excited about it coming out ever since. This book tells the story of Mungo, who is a Protestant boy who lives in Glasgow, and he falls in love with James, who is Catholic. This book takes place in the early 90s. And Mungo is the youngest of 3, and he lives with his alcoholic mother. And this book tells the struggle of Mungo trying to live while hiding a huge secret and trying to care for his mother, who is just destructive. This book was utterly heartbreaking in so many places. I struggled so hard to read the last 2 chapters because I could not see through my own tears, and I know I probably should have, gone and got a tissue or something and stopped reading until my eyes stopped leaking, but no, I didn't want to. I wanted to just keep going and I read through the sobs. I utterly loved Mungo. I wanted nothing but good times for Mungo. This book was very tough in some places to read. If you've read Shuggie Bain, you'll probably have gotten a grasp of Douglas Stuart's writing and know that it will be quite hard in points to read, but ultimately it did leave me feeling quite hopeful, despite all of the horrific things that this wee boy went through. And he shouldn't have gone through any of the terrible things that happened to him. And despite this book being quite dark and just such a sad subject matter, it wasn't depressing to read because it was written in... Douglas Stuart is such a wonderful writer. It was such a beautifully written book that I could continue reading while horrible things were happening, and I just wanted to keep reading because I just wanted to enjoy more of Mungo. And I do feel like while this book was so sad and so heartbreaking, there were moments of lightness and moments of hope, and that's what I enjoy from this author, that they don't leave me... Well, I did feel broken, but they don't leave me broken. They leave me sort of feeling like things could be good. And that's all I want. I just want things to be good. But they leave me feeling like there is some hope. That is the beautiful thing of finding the hope in the darkness. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars, and as soon as I finished reading it, I had to check with my friends to see who else had read it because it only came out last week, but I couldn't put it down. And so many of my friends have read this too, and we all loved it. And yeah, I'm very happy that I am super up to date with my pre-orders now. Yay, I'm proud. So it's been I feel like it's been such a good month for my Scottish reading, with some nice high ratings. I've found a new favourite in young Mungo. Turns out I like poetry from Deep Wheel Arcadia. Who knew? I have had a great month. Now I feel like I'm rambling. So thank you for watching. Bye!